Dinosaurs. They've been on my mind since before I can remember, but no other group of dinosaurs has piqued my interest more than the sauropods. Their unrivaled size, strength, and majesty made them stand out tall, even amongst dinosaurs. So when I first got Ark and saw the Bronto, I couldn't wait to tame one and conquer the Arks on one of they suck. The Bronto is just a bad tame, and today I want to give my reasons why, but not only that, I want to suggest some possible ideas on how to make the Bronto better and finally find its place amongst the Arks. In a world infested with as much danger as there are grains of sand on the beach, strength and combat plays a very important role in Ark. So, how does the Bronto do in this category? Well, short answer, not so good. I, and many other people, from what I hear, think the Bronto just feels so weak. But the Brontos are actually pretty strong. At base level, they do 60 damage, which is only 2 less damage than a base level Rex. And Rexes are considered to be pretty good combatants. So if the Bronto's lack of ferocity doesn't come from its damage, where does it come from? Well, that answer all lies on this guy. Because by looking at the DPS of the Bronto, we see how drastically it really falls behind. Using the Bronto on a training dummy, we can see it hits the dummy every 1 second, which was actually better than I expected. But now, let's compare that to other dinosaurs in its tier. The Rex hits twice every 1 second. The Spino's primary hits twice every 1 second, and its secondary hits once every 1 second. Their primary hits twice every 1 second, and secondary hits once every 1 second. And the Allo hits twice every 1 second. My dinos are extremely leveled, so to see the real difference and effect this has on the Bronto, let's convert these stats into the base level. At the base level, the Bronto does 60 damage every 1 second. In comparison, the Rex does 124 damage per second, the Spino's primary does 80, and its secondary does 60, the Theres primary does 104, and its secondary does 52, and the Allo does 70. These other creatures highlight that the Bronto doesn't lack damage, but DPS, making them feel way weaker than they actually are. Not to mention, the Spino and Allo can both buff themselves to make them stronger, and the Theres secondary, while dealing less damage than the Bronto, is really good because it can apply torpidity to riders on the back of tames, eventually knocking them out. The Bronto's tail swipe just doesn't do anything all that special. The only good thing I can say about the Bronto's attacks is that it has a huge AoE. While it can be good sometimes, most of the times it just ends up aggroing random creatures. Like, while even making this video, I accidentally aggroed creatures using the Bronto. In ASA, they did receive a small change as their tail seemingly hits targets twice in a single tail swipe. The initial hit and when the tail is coming back. But even then, that's just what Rex's, Spinos, Theres, and Allos do normally. Sadly, the Bronto just lacks in the damage department when compared to other tames in its tier and even below. But even if they were good at fighting, their mobility and size would still hold them back, which is my next point. One of the things that makes the Bronto stand out most is its ability to wield a platform saddle. But how useful is it? Wells, when Ragnarok came out to Ark Ascended, I wanted to do something I've never done before. Explore the map on the back of a Bronto. I've always wanted to explore a map and build my base on the back of a sauropod. It just sounds like such an awesome idea brought to life in Ark. Unfortunately, I never did this, because the Bronto is just too slow and too big of a creature to actually enjoy using it as a mobile base. Doing daily tasks on the Bronto already takes a long time because of how slow they are. Imagining traveling across the map on a Bronto sounds like a nightmare to me. Their large size also makes it really difficult because it restricts you from going down certain natural passes and areas in which you can comfortably walk your Bronto. This is really disappointing, as building a mobile home on the back of a Bronto definitely seems like something you're supposed to be able to do. Even the dossier seems to agree with me, as Helena reads, peaceful tribes use it to carry incredible quantities of resources, while warring tribes use it to mobilize their army. But I can't ever see someone actually using a Bronto as a way to transport resources or a battle mount. I don't want to talk too much about PvP, as I don't play that, but I could definitely see the Bronto being more useful here because of the platform saddle. But even then, it seems like if people need a creature with a platform saddle, most choose the Parasaur over the Bronto. I assume this is because they are more maneuverable and quicker than a Bronto. The Bronto's lack of speed and maneuverability removes the whole mobile aspect from a mobile base, making it nearly unusable in this category too. Okay, so Brontos don't do that much damage that quickly, and aren't even the best or good mobile bases. But what about farming? It's a very important part of Ark, so how do they do there? Well, they're actually decently good here. Given the right circumstances, Brontos can be amazing berry gatherers. Their huge AoE attack can gather a ton of berries all at once if you live near a forest, But if you don't, gathering berries with them will take forever. Some biomes have their bushes far apart from each other, so walking a Bronto from small berry bush to small berry bush is just such a slow process and not really worth it. Compare this to a Therizinosaurus, who would do great in both areas because of their speed, and Theris aren't even the only example. Dire bears, megatheriums, and even woolly mammoths who aren't particularly fast themselves would still be faster than Bronto, and a better overall berry farmer. Okay, but that's a little unfair, because most bases are actually built near forests and thus bushes, and yes, you're right. But even then, Bronto still has some shortcomings, mainly in the form of their speed, once again. Once you're done collecting a good amount of berries, you want to head back to your base. Well, now you either gotta walk your even slower Bronto now because of all the berries it's carrying, or leave it there and make multiple trips back and forth from your base to the Bronto. It's just easier and quicker to use something like a Theria and even Mammoth because of their faster movement. So, while an alright choice of farming, there are just far better options than the Bronto, which I think is a great way to describe the Bronto. I think the main problem with the Bronto is that everything the Bronto can do, something else can do better. Need a creature who can do damage, tame a Rex, Spino, Theory, or some other stronger and faster tame. Want to travel across the Arks on a mobile base? Use a Parasaur, they're faster and easier to traverse the lands. Or a Quetz, which is even better because it can fly. The Bronto is certainly a creature you could use to farm, but Theories, Megatheriums, and Mammoths are just better overall. In PvP, it seems like players tend to use creatures like Stegos, Strikes, Parasaurs, Rockloams, and Diplos over the Bronto the majority of the time. There's just nothing the Bronto brings to Ark that another creature doesn't do, and do better. But like I said, I'm not here just to complain about a Bronto, but try to help it find its place among the Arks. I want to give the Bronto a unique attack, which is pretty hard since I don't want to give it a stomp attack like the Titano or neck sweep like the Drenatus. So I'll focus on what the Bronto already uses, its tail. The tail of the Bronto would get a new move called Tail Trap. Using the long and strong tail of the Bronto, it can wrap its tail around the bodies of other creatures and start increasing their rapidity quickly while decreasing their oxygen rapidly as well. This can be used to help tame creatures or knock out enemies' tames. Also, it could be used to drag creatures around, like if you want to bring a creature to a safer location to tame or to a taming trap. The second attack I would give to the Bronto would be a shoulder bump or body slam type move. The immense size and strength of the Bronto would allow it to ram itself into the majority of Ark's tames, dealing a lot of damage and a ton of knockback. The larger creature is, the less knockback it would receive, but larger creatures would have a chance to be stunned when hit with this move, maybe for like 20 seconds or something. I think this idea is really cool, and will open new ways to use the Bronto in combat. I've always seen the Bronto as sort of protector of herbivores, trying to defend them from carnivores, so I want to show that in Ark. The Bronto's first ability would be called Herbivore Roar, where it lets out a bellowing roar that buffs all nearby herbivores' damage and resistance while nerfing the damage and resistance of carnivores. As well, this roar would give herbivores some resistance against bleed and fire damage, only from wild creatures, as I think it might be too overpowered if it gave bleed and fire resistance from tame creatures too, as soakers are pretty strong in PvP, and bleed is one of the best counters to them. So if you could give resistance to bleed damage, it would make life even harder for solo or small tribes to go up against larger tribes. The second ability would be called Carnivore Devourer. Upon killing a carnivore, the Bronto would get a buff to its damage, resistance, and speed, making them stronger combatants and faster tames. As well as that, I would increase the base speed stat of the Bronto to make it more viable of a mobile home. And then, I would give them a passive ability of having a huge reduction to the amount of damage they take on their legs, so little creatures wouldn't be much of a threat to them. I love sauropods, and the Bronto is such a classic dinosaur to me, and one day in Ark, I hope it gets the love and attention it deserves to one day be a great and viable tame amongst the ever-expanding Ark roster. But with that being said, I'm Rexy Blue. I hope you enjoyed the video. Liking and subscribing would be much appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day, be kind, and goodbye.
I'm in the Dino Squad, 65 million years ago, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, prehistoric dinosaurs, I'm in the Dino Squad.